Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chele Gimel, and Mirz Hashem today we will be learning, let me just make an adjustment here, I'm sorry. Mirz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos, and we pick up today on the very bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch on Mem Vav Amud Beis, Siman Reish Ayin Aleph Sif Hey. Bottom line, near the end of the line, the words of the Ramah Haga. Our learning today should be a schus for Achenu Beis Yisrael. Hanesunim Batsaru Bashivya Ha'imdim Ben Bayamu Ben Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Alehem V'Yetziam Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afelu La'iro Mishim L'Geula Hashta Bagala Uvizman Kariv and Amar Amen. Our learning should be a schus for Shalema for Tzvi Ben Leah Miriam, who I believe is undergoing a very, very serious, complicated back surgery today, perhaps even as we speak, and our learning should certainly be a schus for all of our brothers and sisters that find themselves standing in harm's way in Eretz Yisrael and B'chol Makom Shehem. Okay, so here in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, we've been discussing different scenarios where somebody is in middle of a Suda. He started a Suda on Friday afternoon, he started a Suda on Erev Shabbos, and now suddenly he realizes that it's Shabbos, but he's holding in the middle of a Suda. Now, we learned the halacha that once Shabbos begins, you're not allowed to eat. You're not even allowed to have a drink of water. You're not allowed to taste anything prior to making Kiddush. This person finds himself in the middle of a Suda, and suddenly he realizes, it's Shabbos, Kiddush Hayom. Shabbos jumped up on me. I'm in the middle of a Suda. What do I do? So we've discussed these different scenarios in Sif Dalid, in the beginning of Sif Hey. Now we move on the same theme. It says the Ramah, Haga, Adam sheshachach lekadesh ad la'acher sheberach birchas hamoitzi. Very interesting case. Somebody sat down to eat Friday evening. Somehow he forgot that it was Shabbos, I guess. And he sat down to eat. He didn't make Kiddush. He went, he washed. He comes over to the table now. He goes ahead, he picks up his challah, and he makes a bracha hamoitzi. And then right after he makes the hamoitzi, he realizes that he did not make Kiddush. So again, says the Ramah, Adam sheshachach lekadesh, person forgot to make Kiddush. Ad la'acher sheberach berchas hamoitzi, until after he already has made a hamoitzi on his challah. V'nizkar kodim she'achal, and he remembers after he made the bracha, but before he ate. So what should he do now? Now, if you start doing the math in your head, you realize the different levels of complexity to this shaila. On the one hand, he made a berchas hamoitzi. Now, once he made a berchas hamoitzi, he must eat bread. If he doesn't eat bread, it's going to be a bracha levatala. So what do you want him to do? He made hamoitzi. Should he just stop everything? And now what? Go take wine and make Kiddush? You can't do that. The bracha on the yayin and the Kiddush would be a hefsek between his bracha of hamoitzi and eating bread, which would mean that his brachas hamoitzi would now become a bracha levatala. So we can't tell him to do that. On the other hand, there's an isser to eat before you make Kiddush. And he didn't make Kiddush. He made a hamoitzi. He must eat, but he didn't make Kiddush. To eat now is also problematic. So what should he do? Says the Ramah, you know what he should do? Yekadesh al hapas. What he should do is, he just made hamoitzi, he still didn't eat. Okay, now make the bracha of Kiddush. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanou b'mitzvos v'rotzavanu, etc., etc. And he's going to make Kiddush al hapas. Yekadesh al hapas, he should make Kiddush on the pas, v'achar kach yochal, and then he'll go ahead and he'll eat his bread. Now, what he's doing is not lechatchila, because if he has yayin, if he has wine, really when you have wine, you're supposed to be mekadesh al yayin. You're not supposed to be mekadesh al pas. But over here, this person found himself in a bind. He's in a real pickle. He made a hamoitzi, so he has to eat. He can't eat because he didn't make Kiddush. All right, you know what? Be mekadesh al pas. Make the bracha of Kiddush, and if you make the bracha of Kiddush, go ahead and eat the challah. And the bracha of Kiddush is not going to be considered a hefsek between the hamoitzi and the eating of the pas, because now that's all part and parcel of the format of Kiddush. You're making Kiddush ala pas. When you make Kiddush ala pas, that's what you do. You make hamoitzi, and then you make the bracha of Kiddush. Okay, let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Kanchav Gimel. In this case, when did the person remember that he neglected to make Kiddush? After the hamoitzi, koydem she'achal, but before he ate. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Hainu koydem she'tam prusas hamaitzi. What does this mean? It means he remembered that he forgot to make kiddush before he ever tasted any of the pas. The la'achar she'tam, because if we tweak the case a little bit, and he remembers after he takes some of the pas, the la'achar she'tam, now you kaddish al hayayinim yeshloi. If you remember that you neglected to make kiddush after you already eat the pas, okay, so now do you have wine? Go get wine and make kiddush al hayayin. Masha ain't kain kaidem zeh, but if you remember before you tasted from the challah, tzarich lekadish al pas, you're forced to make kiddush al pas, alpha pishiyesh layayin, even if you have a bottle of wine on the table. Because what are you going to do? You can't break now and go ahead and make kiddush al hayayin. The bar priagafen of the kiddush al hayayin is going to constitute a hefsik between the hamoitzi and the eating of the pas. So that's not an option. Miu, however, and this is a very interesting line here in the Mishnah Berurah. Miu, however, tells the Chavetz Chaim tells us, Tzarich lahavi lefanav oid lechem Mishnah. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this: in this scenario that the Mechaber just gave us, where somebody went ahead, washed, sat down to eat, made a hamoitzi, and then realized, whoops, I forgot to make kiddush. It sounds like this person is in weekday mode. Sounds like he's in Tuesday night mode. Now, if he's in Tuesday night mode, he probably doesn't have lechem Mishnah in front of him. Now, the Mechaber is saying, what should this person do? He just made a hamoitzi. Now, before he eats, he should make kiddush. He should make the bracha of Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvayis of Aratzavanu. He should make kiddush, and then after he makes kiddush, he's going to eat. Says the Mishnah Berurah, he has to make sure that he has lechem Mishnah. Now, that's very, very interesting that the Mishnah Berurah is telling us he has to have lechem Mishnah. Why does he have to have lechem Mishnah? Remember, this person already made a hamoitzi. It's too late. As far as the hamoitzi is concerned, he made the hamoitzi without lechem Mishnah. Bringing lechem Mishnah to the table now is not going to help for that. He made the hamoitzi already on one challah or on a slice of bread or whatever it is. It's not going to help now to bring lechem Mishnah to the table as far as the hamoitzi is concerned. What the Mishnah Berurah seems to be saying, and he's pulling this from a Magen Avram, the Mishnah Berurah seems to be telling us that the Magen Avram is telling us that Kiddush requires lechem Mishnah as well. Now, why would Kiddush require lechem Mishnah? So it seems that the requirement of lechem Mishnah, Reb Shlomo Zalman writes this very clearly, and I think it's pretty clear from the Aruch HaShulchan as well, is that the din of lechem Mishnah is a din in the beginning of the Suda. It's not just a din in the hamoitzi. It's a din that a zecher to the mon requires that the Sudas Shabbos has to be on lechem Mishnah. So even if you already made the hamoitzi, it doesn't mean, all right, the hamoitzi is done already, we don't need lechem Mishnah anymore. No, the Suda has to be made with lechem Mishnah. Now you're making Kiddush, make sure this is now marks the beginning of the official Shabbos Suda. When you're making Kiddush, make sure that there's lechem Mishnah. That's what the Mishnah Berurah means here. If you're in a situation where you don't have lechem Mishnah, I can give you another scenario where the person's not in Tuesday night mode, he's in Friday night mode. It could be that this person actually brought lechem Mishnah to the table. He went, he washed, he made the bracha of hamoitzi, and he cut the challah. And now before he ate, he realizes that he didn't make kiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah, okay, you're going to make kiddush now ala pas, but before you make the bracha of Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvayis of Aratzavanu, bring new lechem Mishnah to the table, so that you make the bracha of kiddush and you have lechem Mishnah in front of you. Okay. So now the Mishnah Berurah just points out, you might ask yourself, wait a second, this person made hamoitzi. He's not eating yet, because we're telling him now to make kiddush. So he has to make the bracha of Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvayis of Aratzavanu. Now that's not a hefsik. The reason that's not a hefsik between the hamoitzi and the achila is because that's the format of kiddush. The format of kiddush ala pas is hamoitzi kiddush, and only then do you eat. But now we just added in a new pause. Now we just added in that he has to go get lechem Mishnah. Is going and getting the lechem Mishnah, is that a hefsik? Or how about if he has to ask his wife, honey, could you get some lechem Mishnah? Now he's actually speaking also. Does that constitute a hefsek? Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. Anything involved with getting the lechem Mishnah does not constitute a hefsek. V'zeh loy mikri hefsek tehevi mitzarech suda, because that's all considered to be part of the tzarchei asuda, and therefore it's not a hefsek. Ukedalael b'siman kuf samach zayin sif vav. Ois kat chav dalet. So the Mechaber said in this scenario, yekadesh al hapas. What does that mean? The lo yomer ata vayachulu, but he should not say vayachulu. So again, what's the case over here? The guy went, he made a hamoitzi, now he realizes he didn't make kiddush, he's going to make kiddush al hapas now, but he should not say the paragraph of vayachulu. He should only say the bracha of kiddush. And Vayichulu, says the Mishnah Berurah, Lo yomer ata Vayichulu rak b'soich hasuda. He should recite Vayichulu later on in middle of the Suda. And from the Mishnah Berurah later in this Siman, Mishnah Berurah is cut memhei, it's going to be clear that means he should say Vayichulu al hakois. Later in the Suda, he should pick up a kois of yayin. He won't make a bar priagofen, assuming he already has a bar priagofen in the meal somewhere. He's not going to make a new bar priagofen, but he'll pick up a kois and say vayichulu over a kois. So he made a hamoitzi. Now he realizes he never made kiddush. So now he's going to make the bracha of kiddush. Now, how about if this person remembers that he neglected to make kiddush after he already took a bite of the challah? What the Mishnah Berurah is telling us over here is there's two possible scenarios. One scenario is this person sat down, he made a hamoitzi, and he actually ate some challah. Now there are two possibilities of what to do moving forward. Does he have wine? If he has wine, so now he's going to make a regular kiddush al yayin. He's going to grab his bottle of Cabernet, fill up a kois, and he's going to make a regular standard issue kiddush al yayin. How about if he doesn't have yayin? Well, if he doesn't have yayin, so then he's going to make kiddush al pas. But he's going to make kiddush al pas without making a hamoitzi. He just made a hamoitzi and he just ate challah. So he's not going to make another hamoitzi. Says the Mishnah Berurah, in both of these cases, either way, you're not going to make a new hamoitzi. So again, you made a hamoitzi, you ate some of the challah, you realized you didn't make kiddush. If you have no yayin, so what you're going to do now is you're going to make the bracha of Asher Kiddushanim b'mitzvahs of Aratzavanu, and you're going to make kiddush al hapas. Do you need a new hamoitzi for that kiddush al hapas? No, you just made a hamoitzi on pas. You're not going to make another hamoitzi now. Or, scenario number two, you made hamoitzi, you ate a piece, you realized you didn't make kiddush, you have a bottle of Cabernet. Okay, fill up the kais, make kiddush al yayin. After you make kiddush, you want to continue eating challah. Do you have to make a new hamoitzi? No, there's no reason why you should have to make a new hamoitzi. You made a hamoitzi already at this suda. You don't have to make a new hamoitzi. Okay, continues the Ramah, end of the top line here on Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Avol b'havdalah yoichal tchila taharei ein mavdilin al hapas. What's the story over here? Now we're coming to the end of Shabbos. Now we know that you're not allowed to eat before you make havdalah. But this person sat down to eat Malav Malka, and he went ahead and he washed, and now he realizes, I never made havdalah. So Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Hamaitzi Lechem in Aretz. I didn't make havdalah. Now he didn't eat any challah yet. Should we apply the same halacha? Should we tell him that now he should make the bracha of havdalah? Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Hamavdu B'Kedesh Lachem Ed Elochei Ben Yisrael La'amim, before eating any bread? That would be a hefsek between the hamoitzi and the eating. On the other hand, he didn't make havdalah yet. Is he allowed to eat? Says the Ramah, no. Avol b'havdalah yoichal tchila. By havdalah, if you made the hamoitzi, you must eat, because you have no other option. It's not an option for you to make the bracha of hamavdil now, because if you make the bracha of hamavdil now, you're turning your hamoitzi into a bracha levatala, because you're being mafsik between your hamoitzi and your eating with the bracha of hamavdil. The bracha of hamavdil has absolutely no business being inserted between a bracha of hamoitzi and eating of bread. Kiddush is not that way. By Kiddush, you have a din that at least b'di'evet, if you don't have yayin, you could make Kiddush al pas. So the matbeya, the format of hamoitzi, and then the bracha of kiddush, and then eating challah, that format is a halachically acceptable format. It's a format that has a precedent. But by Havdalah, there is no such format as making hamoitzi, making the bracha of hamavdil, and then eating bread, because there's no such thing as being mavdil al hapas. That creation doesn't exist. So by Havdalah, if you went ahead and you made hamoitzi, and now you realize you didn't make Havdalah, you got to eat, and only then could you make Havdalah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yochal Tchila Pirish Prusas Hamoitzi. You have to have a piece of the bread that you made the Hamoitzi on, Kedei Shaloi Tiyeh Ala Bracha Levatala, so that your Hamoitzi shouldn't be a Bracha Levatala, because you are mafsik between the bracha and the eating with Havdalah. V'achakach tzarich lahafsik u'lahavdil. Once you eat a piece, now you're going to interrupt your meal and you'll make Havdalah. V'ayin ma'shakasav b'hamagen Avram b'reish Siman reish tzamutesiv cotton beis de lahapaiskim Havdalah d'Rabbanan. According to those that hold that Havdalah is only a requirement midrabanan, ein tzarich lahafsik. You actually would not be mechuyev to interrupt your meal. This is based on the rule that when it comes to a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, even though you're not supposed to start a suda when the zman of the mitzvah has arrived, if you do start a suda, even though you started that suda be'isr, when it comes to a derabanan, you're allowed to complete the suda before you mekayim the mitzvah derabanan. So says the Magen Avram, according to those shittas that Havdalah is a derabanan, in this scenario, you actually wouldn't be mechuyev to interrupt your suda. You could finish your Malama Malka and then make Havdalah. Okay, now we move along to Sifav, which is a complex, it's a very complex sif. We could spend 3 shiurim just giving all the background, the sugya and the machlokes rishonim that pertain to this sif, but that's not beyond the scope of what we do in this share. So we'll take it kind of from 30,000 feet. I'll try to give you the information that you need for the proper understanding of the halacha, but I will tell you that there's a lot going on here behind the scenes, and I think it will be obvious to the listener that there's more here than really what we're covering. Says the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mechaber Sifav. Im gamar seudasai. So we're going back to the case of somebody who sat down to eat a suda on Friday afternoon. He sat down Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, way before Shabbos. He's eating an Erev Shabbos suda, a Friday suda. This is not a Shabbos suda. Im gamar seudasai. He actually comes all the way to the end of his suda. And in the Mishnah Berurah, we're going to see that this means he got to the end of his suda. He got up, he washed Mayim Achronim. He sang Al Nari's Bavel, not Shirmals, because it's not Shabbos. He sang Al Nari's Bavel, and he went and he washed Mayim Achronim, and he picked up the bencher, and he's about to bench. Im Gamar Sudasai, the Kidei Shayim. And now he looks at his watch, and he realizes, it's Shabbos. Koidem Shebeirach Berchas Hamazain. He didn't bench yet. So he got all the way to the end of his meal. He's about to bench, and now he realizes, guess what? It's Shabbos. Now, why is this a problem? Well, right away it's a problem according to those that hold that Berchas Hamazain requires a kais, right? There are those shittas that we learned about when we learned Hilchas Berchas Hamazain. There are those shittas that hold that Berchas Hamazain tu'una kais. It must have a kais. Well, over here you have a problem, because what are you going to do? You can't drink from the kais, because now the Zman of Shabbos came, and you're not allowed to drink anything before Kiddush. You have another problem, and that is that I told you this Mechaber is talking about where you're already washed Mayim Achronim. And this Mechaber is also based on those shittas that hold, the shittas arith, that once you wash Berchas Hamazain, once you wash Mayim Achronim, I think I said wash Berchas Hamazain several times. Pardon me. Once you wash Mayim Achronim, you're not allowed to be mafsik anymore. Once you wash Mayim Achronim, you must bench. So this fellow ended his meal. He washed Mayim Achronim. He's gonna bench. He needs a kais. It's Shabbos. He didn't make Kiddush. What do? Says the Mechaber. Im Gamar Sudasa, if this gentleman finished his meal, the Kidei Shayim, and now it became Shabbos, Kaidim Sheberach Berchas Hamazain, before he benched. Says the Mechaber, you know what you do? Mevarich Berchas Hamazain ala kais rishain. First bring one kais and you'll bench on the kais. Va'achakach omer kiddush hayom al kos sheni. And then bring a second kos and make kiddush on the second kos. Okay, there's a lot that's vague over here, so let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is Katan Chav Zayin. Im Gamar Sudasai. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you should know, first of all, Umayri, the Mechaber is talking about a case, Umayri Gamkein, Shenotol Yodav Lamayim Achroinim. We're talking about a case, and he's basing this on the Magen Avram primarily. We're talking about a case where this person already washed Mayim Achroinim. And now before he started benching, he now looks at his watch and he realizes it's Shabbos. In this case, the Mechaber holds that the first thing he's going to have to do is he's going to have to bench on a kos. Because since he already washed Mayim Achroinim, he must bench. So he can't interrupt now. He can't go ahead and make Kiddush and drink Kiddush wine. He already washed Mayim Achroinim. He can't be mafsik between Mayim Achroinim and benching. So he washed Mayim Achroinim. He has to bench. If you hold Birkas Hamazon tuning kos, so he has to bench on a kos. Vayin makachasafti sibikofayin tesiv cotton base. Aval. But if he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim, even this first opinion here in Sivav, because we're going to see a dissenting opinion, but even according to this Dea Rishona recorded here in Sivav, if he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim, Svirale, the Pyrus Mappa Umakadesh Mikoidim. If he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim, so this person came to the end of his meal, he realizes Kiddush Hayom. If he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim, what we would tell him is, we would tell him to be Pyrus Mappa, which means cover up the bread on the table, grab a kos, and go ahead and make Kiddush. We would tell him to make a Kiddush now. And not only would we tell him to make Kiddush, V'lo yivarech bar priagofen be'es HaKiddush im shasa yayin mikoide be'emtza asuda v'chanal b'sif daled. Not only would we tell him to be Pyrus Mappa and make Kiddush, we would tell him to be Pyrus Mappa, make Kiddush, and don't make a bar priagofen on this Kiddush, assuming that you had wine during this meal. So again, scenario, the guy sat down 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Friday afternoon, he washed, he ate challah, he's having, but it's not a Shabbos Suda. I'll take out the word challah. He washed and he ate rye bread. He ate bread on Friday afternoon, but he stretched out his Suda. And not only that, in the middle of this Suda, he made a bari priagofen and he drank wine. And now he realizes Kiddush Hayom. He was about to bench. He realizes Kiddush Hayom, but he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim. If he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim, so then this goes back to Sif Daled. Be Pyrus Mappa, cover up the bread on the table, grab a kos, go ahead and make Kiddush. You're not going to make a bari priagofen because in this meal you already made a bari priagofen on your Cabernet. So you're not going to make a new bari priagofen, but you're going to make Kiddush without a bari priagofen. You'll make Kiddush, you'll leave out the hagofen, and you'll do the rest of Kiddush. The problem over here, the reason why the Mechaber does not tell you to do this, the reason why the Mechaber is telling you to bench first, is because the Mechaber is talking about in a scenario where the person already washed Mayim Achroinim. Since he already washed Mayim Achroinim, there's no longer an option available to him to be Pyrus Mappa and make Kiddush, because he washed Mayim Achroinim. Now that he washed Mayim Achroinim, he has to bench right away. Not only that, says the Mishnah Berurah, Va'afilo Amar Havlon Unevarech. Let's say he didn't wash Mayim Achroinim, but he said, okay, let's bench. That's Havlon Unevarech. Havlon Unevarech usually marks the end of the Suda, at least to the extent that if you want to eat or drink anything more, you're going to have to make new brachas. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Va'afilo Amar Havlon Unevarech, Gam Kain Mekadesh B'tchila, Kevin Shaloi Notol Yadav Adayin. Even in this case, where the guy said Havlon Unevarech, we're still going to tell him that he should go ahead and make Kiddush before he benches. The only difference is Ach Bazet, Tzarech Levarech Bar Priagofen, Beis HaKiddush, Kevin Sha'amar Havlon Unevarech, V'chanal V'simikof Ayin Tesef Aleph. If he said Havlon Unevarech, so then he'll make Kiddush, and he'll need a Hagofen. Because once he said Havlon Unevarech, if he wants to drink wine, the old Bari Priagofen is terminated by the fact that he said Havlon Unevarech. Once he said, okay, let's bench, that's being Mesiach Das from any further eating or drinking. So in this scenario, yes, we'll tell him to make Kiddush before he benches because he didn't wash Mayim Achrayim, so he can make Kiddush before he benches, but he's going to need a new Hagafen. That he's going to need. And then he's going to make Kiddush al Koi Sheni. Al Koi Sheni. Wonders the Mishnah Berurah, you might be thinking, why do I need 2 kaisos over here? You're telling me that the very first thing I should do, I washed my machrayim already. The first thing that I should do is I should bench on a kais. Okay, so I'll bench on a kais. Now I have to make Kiddush on a kais. Why do I need a kais sheni? The Mishnah Berurah, the Mechaber said you should bench on kais rishon and make Kiddush on kais sheni. Why do I need 2 kaisos? I'll bench on a kais, and then I'll make Kiddush on the same kais. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you can't do that. You can't bench and make Kiddush on the same kais. There's a famous rule. We don't bundle up mitzvahs. When we bundle up mitzvahs, it makes it look like mitzvahs are cheap to us. We want to kill a lot of birds with one stone. We have 1 kais, we'll knock off 2 mitzvahs. No, each mitzvah is chashuv in its own right. Use 1 kais for benching, and then use another kais for Kiddush. Now, there's one very important piece of information that we don't really have here yet. So let's just kind of recap what we're talking about over here. This person was eating a Friday afternoon Suda. He got to the end of his Suda. He went ahead and he washed Mayim Achrayim. He's about to bench. He realizes, it's late. It's Shabbos already. Says the Mechaber, what should he do? He must bench. Since you washed Mayim Achrayim already, the Rif, Shitas a Rif, you washed Mayim Achrayim, you got to bench. You can't be mafsik, so you can't make Kiddush. Okay, so says the Mechaber, take 1 kais and bench. After you bench, take another kais and make Kiddush. How about drinking? Did you make a Bari Pri Hagafen on the kais that you benched on, and are you drinking from it? And now if you did do that, now when you make Kiddush and on your second kais, are you making a new Bari Pri Hagafen on your second kais and now drinking from that kais? What happens with the Hagafens and the drinking? A very superficial reading of the Mechaber, right? If you don't think into it, you just read the words of the Mechaber, it sounds like what the Mechaber is telling you to do is bench on a kais. Now, normally benching on a kais means that you bench while you're holding the kais, and then at the end of benching, Savri, Barakatah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, Bari Pri Hagafen, and you drink the wine. So it sounds like the Mechaber is saying, bench on a kais, make Hagafen, drink the wine, put it down, fill up another kais, make Kiddush with a Bari Pri Hagafen, and then drink that wine. But that would be very strange. If you just made a Bari Pri Hagafen on your kais of Birkas Hamazon, and now you know that you're about to make Kiddush, how could you make another Bari Pri Hagafen? So certainly that Bari Pri Hagafen would seem to be inappropriate. So which Hagafen is the inappropriate one? Should you forego the Bari Pri Hagafen on the kais of benching and only make Hagafen on the Kiddush kais? Or should you make a Hagafen on the benching kais and forego the Hagafen on the Kiddush kais? So that's all going to become clear from the Ramah and from more Mishnah Berurahs. But I know a lot of you are puzzling about that right now, so I wanted to put out the question. But now we go into another point first. Let's continue in the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, so I just told you that first you're going to bench and then you're going to make Kiddush. Says the Mechaber, V'tzarich lahazkir shel Shabbos beBirkas Hamazon. When you bench now on this Friday afternoon Suda, right? You ate this Suda Friday afternoon. It was when you were ready to bench that you realized it's already Shabbos. But now when you're benching, it is Shabbos. Do you say Ritzei or not? On the one hand, this wasn't a Shabbos meal. On the other hand, it is Shabbos now. So says the Mechaber, V'tzarich lahazkir shel Shabbos beBirkas Hamazon, af al pi shemevarich kaidim Kiddush. The Mechaber says, yes, you're going to say Ritzei. Now, the way the Mechaber puts it is, you're going to say Ritzei even though you're benching before you make Kiddush, which is very strange, right? You didn't even make Kiddush Friday night yet, and you're benching, and you're already saying Ritzei. The other thing that's strange about it is that you're saying Ritzei in benching on a Friday Suda. This wasn't a Shabbos Suda, this was a Friday Suda. And you're saying Ritzei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Cotton Chavtes, Shal Shabbos. You're going to say Ritzei. Does lean on Basar Hashta, because we go by now. Right now, when you're benching, it is Shabbos, so you say Ritzei. When you're benching, it is Shabbos. So if you bench on Shabbos, you say Ritzei. But in this case, says the Mishnah Berurah, and he says this is a davar muskim that everybody would agree to, you don't, if you forgot Ritzei, you're not going to repeat benching. Now let's dig into that just a tiny bit. On a normal Shabbos, by a Shabbos Suda, if you skip Ritzei and you don't remember until, the end of benching, you have to bench over again. But over here, if you skipped Ritzei, you're not going to bench over again. What's the difference? Well, to understand the difference, you have to understand why the halacha is that if you bench on Shabbos without Ritzei, you have to repeat benching. The reason is because on Shabbos, there's a chiyuv to eat a Suda with pas. So that means that on Shabbos, there is always a chiyuv to bench. Because if you have to have a Suda with pas, you have to bench. So that means Shabbos brings a chiyuv of benching. Since Shabbos brings a chiyuv of benching, Chazal attached to that benching a need to mention me'ein ha'ma'ura. You have to mention that it's Shabbos, and it's so strict that if you don't, you must repeat benching. Again, because the benching is completely tied to your chiyuvim of Shabbos. One of your chiyuvim of Shabbos is you're going to have to bench, because you have to have a Suda ala pas. So that benching brings with it a chiyuv of Ritzei, and if you don't say Ritzei, you got to bench over again. But this Suda, in our scenario, in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, Siman Siv Vav, the benching that we're talking about is not on a Shabbos Suda. It's a Friday Suda. So it is completely and wholly inappropriate to turn around and say, you must repeat benching because you left out Ritzei on a weekday Suda. This is not a Suda that came because of Shabbos. That whole svara only applies to a Suda that came because of Shabbos. But this Suda didn't come because of Shabbos. So it's very inappropriate to say you must repeat benching. So therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, everybody would agree that if you forgot Ritzei in this case, you would not repeat benching. Okay, now we go into the Ramah, where some things will become clearer to us between the words of the Ramah and the words of the Mishnah Berurah, 5 lines down near the middle of the line. Hagah. First, the Ramah addresses this halacha that the Mechaber just said. This halacha about Ritzei. Says the Ramah, Hagah, V'yesh oimrim de'enoi maskir shel Shabbos. The Mechaber says that when you bench on this meal, you have to say Ritzei. Says the Ramah, there are those that say that you do not say Ritzei. Why? Dazlinan basar tchilas hasuda. These shitas hold that you don't go basar hashta, like the Mishnah Berurah said. You don't go by now. You're benching now. It's Shabbos, so you say Ritzei. No, you go by the Suda. The Suda was a Friday Suda. It wasn't a Shabbos Suda, so there's no Ritzei. And the Ramah says, V'chein ikar k'moshen ispar le'el soif siman kuf peches sif yud. We paskin this way, that if it's taka a Friday Suda, you're not going to bench with Ritzei. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton lamid. This Suda started on Friday, so you don't bench with Ritzei. You bench, but you don't say Ritzei. But says the Mishnah Berurah, that's only true in the exact scenario of Siv Vav over here, where you made this Suda on Erev Shabbos, and you were ready to bench before Shabbos began, right? The scenario we had was, you ate your Suda, you're about to bench, and now it's Kiddush Hayom. Now it's Shabbos. So that means all of your eating was on Erev Shabbos. You didn't eat on Shabbos. But if you ate a little bit on Shabbos, then l'kulei al matzarich lahaskir shel Shabbos. Then the Magen Avraham says, even this Ramah would agree that if you ate part of the Suda on Erev Shabbos, and even a little bit of the Suda on Shabbos, now you must bench with Ritzei. Okay, weiter. Says the Ramah. Now we go into this question of how exactly does this work? You're benching on one kais, you're making kiddush on a second kais. What happens with the hagafed? What happens with the drinking? Says the Ramah. V'yesh machloikis. We have a machloikis. Im yimtoim mikoy shel berkas hamazayin koydem sheyikadish. Are you supposed to drink from the kais of benching before you make Kiddush. Now, again, let's think about this. The person, we're stuck in a scenario over here where the person has to bench because he already washed Mayim Achronim. He washed Mayim Achronim, so he must bench. On the other hand, it's Shabbos, and he has not yet made Kiddush. The Mechaber says, you're stuck, you have to bench. But the Mechaber doesn't tell us what to do with the kais. He tells us that you have to bench on a kais. So yes, you're going to pick up a kais, and you're going to bench. But he doesn't tell me what to do with the kais. Now I got to the end of benching. Do I make a Borei Priagofen and drink from it or not? Now, what are the angles of this Shaila? Well, to drink from the kais is problematic. Because if you drink from the kais, you're drinking before Kiddush. You're not allowed to drink before Kiddush. So drinking from the kais would seem to be problematic. On the other hand, not drinking from the kais is not necessarily so problematic. Because even if you don't make a Borei Priagofen now and drink from the kais, you still benched al hakais. You had a kais in front of you. You benched, you recited Birkas Hamazon al hakais. You did it over a kais. Not only that, there's even a svara to say that you could actually make a Borei Priagofen and not drink from the kais. How could you do that? Very simple. You say Birkas Hamazon, holding the kais. Right after Birkas Hamazon, you say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam Borei Priagofen. And you know what you do next? You go right into Kiddush. And then you'll drink wine after Kiddush. What's the problem? You know that you're going to make Kiddush now. So hold the kais for Birkas Hamazon, make a Borei Priagofen, do Kiddush, and drink the wine after Kiddush. So you benched al hakais. You didn't have a problem with drinking wine before Kiddush, and you'll drink the wine after Kiddush. So let's see. So the Ramah says right away that we have a machloikis over here. Whether or not you're supposed to drink from the kais of Birkas Hamazon or not. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Lamed Aleph. There's a machloikis im yitom. Should you drink from the kais? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. What's the background of this machloikis? There are those that hold, says the Mishnah Berurah. Pardon me. There are those that hold, says the Mishnah Berurah, the mevarich Borei Priagofen. There are those that hold that when you finish benching, you should make a Borei Priagofen, v'tayim tekef, and right away you should drink from that kais of benching. K'may b'chol kais shel Birkas Hamazon. Like you always do when you bench on a kais. You're drinking before Kiddush. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you know what these shitas hold? V'loy chashiv tayim kaidem Kiddush. They don't hold that this is called drinking before Kiddush. Mishum da kais shaykh l'suda shahaya kaidem chayvas Kiddush. Very interesting svara. What these shitas say is, why are you benching on a kais now? The reason you're benching on a kais now is because you had an Erev Shabbos Suda. This benching is an Erev Shabbos benching. Therefore, this kais is an Erev Shabbos kais. Now, it's true that physically you're drinking it after Shabbos already began, and you're drinking it before you made Kiddush, but since the status of this kais is that it's an Erev Shabbos kais, why is it an Erev Shabbos kais? Because it's attached to an Erev Shabbos Suda. It's attached to a Suda that brought you a Chiyuv of Birkas Hamazon on Erev Shabbos. The Chiyuv of Birkas Hamazon was not generated on Shabbos before Kiddush. The Chiyuv of this Birkas Hamazon was generated on Erev Shabbos. So it's an Erev Shabbos kais. And therefore when you drink it, that's not called drinking before Kiddush on Shabbos. Fascinating svara. That's what these shitas hold. Umimela. Now let's do the math. According to these shitas, you're gonna bench, you're gonna make a Borei Priagofen, and you're gonna drink the wine. Well, umimela. Once you now made a Borei Priagofen on this kais of Birkas Hamazon, and you're drinking from it, shuv ein tzarich levarech lididhu Borei Priagofen al kais sheni shel Kiddush. Rak Birkas Asher Kiddushanu Bavad. According to this shita, what you're going to do is like this. You got to bench because you already washed my machronim. Since you have to bench, you're going to bench ala kais because this mechaber holds that Birkas Hamazon tuning kais. So you have to have a kais. So you're going to bench. You're going to make a bar priagafen, and you're going to drink the wine. Now you got to make kiddush. Well, now you're going to take another kais. You're going to make kiddush, but you're not going to make a bar priagafen. It would be completely inappropriate, unacceptable halachically to make another bar priagafen now. You just made a bar priagafen a minute ago, and you made that bar priagafen fully aware that you're about to make kiddush and drink more wine. So you can't make another bar priagafen. So you're going to bench, you're going to make a bar priagafen, take a drink, and then you're going to go straight into kiddush. without a new bar priagafen. So that's one shita. But but then there are those that hold that no, you can't drink from this kais of Birkas Hamazon da'asa l'tayim kaidim kiddush because you didn't have kiddush yet, so you're not allowed to drink. Memela ain't a yachal of archalav bar priagafen. If you can't drink, you're not going to make a bar priagafen. You can't make a bar priagafen on a kais that you can't drink, so you're not going to make a bar priagafen. Ella mevarich tchila bar priagafen al kais shel kiddush. Umekadish v'shoiseyu. What you're going to do is like this. You're going to bench on a kais. When you finish benching, you're going to put the kais down. You're not going to make hagafen. You're going to bench on a kais, then you're going to take the kais and you're going to put it down. Then you're going to pick up a second kais. On the second kais, you're going to make a bar priagafen and kiddush. And then you're going to drink from the kiddush kais. And then after you drink from the kiddush kais, you're going to pick up the Birkas Hamazon kais, and you're going to drink from the Birkas Hamazon kais. So the bar priagafen is going to go on the kiddush kais that you're holding, and on the Birkas Hamazon kais from the benching, and you're only going to drink from the Birkas Hamazon kais after the kiddush kais. Very interesting. So again, Umemela, since this shita holds that you're not allowed to drink the wine from the Birkas Hamazon kais, and yachal of arkalav bar priagafen, you can't make a bar priagafen on it. Elam of archila bar priagafen al kais shel kiddush. Instead, you're going to make a bar priagafen on the second kais, on the kiddush kais, umekadish, and make kiddush v'shoiseyu, and drink the kiddush kais. V'achakach shoyse kais shel Birkas Hamazon b'loy bracha, and then you'll drink yayin from the Birkas Hamazon kais without a new hagafen. You're going to use the kiddush hagafen to cover the Birkas Hamazon kais. Okay, back into the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Gam, 3 lines off the bottom. So that was one machlokes. One machlokes was, what do we do with the kais of Birkas Hamazon? Gam, another machlokes, says the Ramah. Gam im tzarich lechol ma'at achar kiddush sheyehei ha-kiddush b'makom suda. Another very interesting machlokes. In our scenario over here, what happened is you ate an Erev Shabbos Suda. You got caught that it's time to bench, but it's already Kiddush Hayoim. Okay, so fine. You're going to bench, and then you're going to make Kiddush. But now you're full. You just ate a Suda, right? So you have a problem because you weren't Yoitza Suda Shabbos. The Suda that you ate is definitely not Suda Shabbos. It was a Friday Suda. So you have a halachic issue that you have a chiyuv of Suda Shabbos that's going to require you to eat. But how about the chiyuv of Kiddush b'makom Suda? Right? We learned that Kiddush has to be b'makom Suda. Now, in this case, the Kiddush is coming at the end of a Friday afternoon Suda. Is that called Kiddush b'makom Suda? After all, I mean, it is b'makom Suda. You just ate a Suda. And now you're making Kiddush at the table with all the delicacies on the table. So, in one sense, it looks like Kiddush b'makom Suda. On the other hand, it's at the end of a Suda. And not only is it at the end of a Suda, it's at the end of a weekday Suda. It's not at the end of a Shabbos Suda. It's the end of a Friday afternoon Suda. Says the Ramah, this is a machlokes. Gam im tzarich lechol ma'at achar Kiddush k'dei sheyeh Kiddush b'makom Suda. It's a machlokes whether or not you have to eat more food now, so that the Kiddush that you make now should be called Kiddush b'makom Suda, or is it called Kiddush b'makom Suda by virtue of the Suda that it just followed? Does that make it Kiddush b'makom Suda? Says the Mishnah Berurah, cut limud beis lechol ma'at. You have a machlokes whether you have to eat a little. The Yeshar, remember, because there are those that say, Kevin sha'achal b'tchila, since you ate a whole Suda before you made this Kiddush, have a Kiddush b'makom Suda. That's called Kiddush b'makom Suda v'shovei tzarich lechol. But the Yeshar, remember, the ein nechshav l'makom Suda, Kevin sha'iseh shachayil. How could you call it Kiddush b'makom Suda? You have Kiddush of Shabbos, that's Kiddush b'makom Suda, because it's attached to a weekday Suda. And therefore you have to eat now to make it Kiddush b'makom Suda. Now again, you're going to have to eat more anyway, because you have to be Mekayim your Chiv of Suda Shabbos. What the Shiloh over here is, do you have to eat now? You just made Kiddush now. In order for this Kiddush, for you to be Yoitze Kiddush, not to be Yoitze Suda Shabbos, but to be Yoitze Kiddush, and to fulfill the requirement of Kiddush b'makom Suda, is this a valid Kiddush because it came at the tail end of a Suda? Or do you have to eat something now on Shabbos because it has to be attached to a Shabbos Suda? Okay. Now, 3 lines off the bottom at the end of the line, where the Mechaber brings another opinion. V'yesh omrim, there are those that say, Da'af b'gemar su'udasai ein mevarech birkas hamazon tchila. The way this sif started off, the scenario that we've been dealing with, you ate a Suda on Erev Shabbos, you're ready to bench, you washed by Machroinim, you realize now it's Kiddush Hayom. The Mechaber said in the day of Rishona, you have to drop everything and you have to bench, because you washed by Machroinim, now you need to bench. Now, says the Mechaber, Yesh Omrim. The Yesh Omrim, this is the Shitas, I think it's the Shitas HaRosh. Now says the Mechaber v'yesh omrim da'af b'gemar sudasai einoi mevarech birkas hamazon tchila. There are those that say that no, you don't have to bench right away. Ella paris mappa umekadesh. Instead of benching, you should taka be paris mappa. You should cover up the challah, and the very first thing you should do is you should make kiddush umevarech hamoitzi, and after kiddush make hamoitzi va'oichel ma'at, and eat something, and then bench. Now, very interesting, because according to this shita, according to this day Shnia, what the Mechaber is saying is like this: you washed my Machroin already. The day Rishona holds, you got to drop everything and bench. The Yesh Omrim says, no. First thing you got to do is you got to make kiddush. So be paris mappa, cover up your bread, and now go ahead and make kiddush. After you make kiddush, you want to eat your Shabbos Suda now, you got to bench. You got to make hamoitzi. Now, you didn't bench yet on the original Suda. You didn't bench. But you need a new hamoitzi, and then you'll bench on everything. Let's take a look and see what the Mishnah Berurah says here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Cotton Lamed Gimel. Well, every now and then I get one of those shiurim where every 30 seconds my phone is ringing in the middle of shiur. You'll ask me, why do I have my phone on? I have my phone on because it's doing my backup audio recording is being done on my phone. But every 30 seconds my phone is ringing from somebody else, and it becomes a distraction. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Kat Lami Gimel, V'yesh Omrim, Svirlu, this shita holds. Dal karchay tzarich lechol miyad achar HaKiddush. 1 second. Yeah, v'yesh omrim. Svirlu. Dal karchay tzarich lechol miyad achar HaKiddush k'dei sheyeh nechshav l'makom suda. This shita holds, first of all, that once you make Kiddush, you have to eat right away for it to be called Kiddush b'makom suda. The suda she'achal metchila ein amayelos lazeh v'chanal. And the Suda that you ate previously cannot make your Kiddush b'makom Suda. How is that germane to our Shaila? Remember, our Shaila over here right now, this Yesh Omrim is disagreeing with the first opinion of the Mechaber. The first opinion of the Mechaber was you got caught, you were about to bench, you realized it's Kiddush Hayom, you got to bench. First bench, then make Kiddush. This Dei Shnia says no, first you got to make Kiddush. Explains the Mishnah Berurah the first piece of this puzzle, why this Yesh Omrim disagrees with the original opinion, is this Yesh Omrim holds that once you make Kiddush, you must eat you must eat on Shabbos in order for it to be called Kiddush b'makom Suda. That's the question that we just had in the Ramah, right? You can't call it Kiddush b'makom Suda by virtue of the fact that it's attached to the end of a weekday meal. This sheet holds you're going to make Kiddush, and you're going to have to eat. Well then, since this person knows full well that in 3 minutes I'm going to have to eat, how are you benching now? Guy ate a meal. He's about to bench. He realizes, oy vey, it's Shabbos. I got to make Kiddush. well, then you also realize that you need to eat. So what are you doing benching? How are you benching now if you know that you have to keep on eating? What are you doing benching? Therefore, this shita holds that this is mamish the case of Sivdalad. This is not called that you got to the end of a Suda and now there's a shiloh of what to do with benching. Guess what? You're not at the end of a Suda. When you realize that it's Shabbos, you also realize that you must continue eating. Since you realize that you must continue eating, you can't bench now. Hamoitzi, the Mechaber told us that if you want to continue eating, you need to make a new Hamoitzi. So explains the Mishnah Berurah. Umekadesh umavar Hamoitzi. V'lo yudami l'de'el b'sif dal d'yesharmim de'ein tzarech l'var Hamoitzi. Over here, we're not going to have a dissenting opinion who holds that you don't have to make a new Hamoitzi. Over here, everyone's going to agree you have to make a new Hamoitzi. Tahachashani, tahamayim shenotl yodav l'mayim achroinim v'chanal. Ukfar nistalik l'gami bazel l'kuli alma me'achil rishonu k'del'el b'sim k'fayin tef aleph. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this. This is a wacky case. The guy ate. He came to the end of his meal. He washed mayim achrayim. Now, once you come to the end of your meal and you wash mayim achrayim, there is nobody in the world who would say that if you decide you want to eat more challah now, you don't need a new hamoitzi. This is worse than havlanu nevarech. This is worse than let's bench. This is a complete hesach hadas. You mamish went to wash mayim achrayim to bench. You were completely mesiach das from your earlier brachas. So certainly, after you make Kiddush, you're going to need a new Hamoitzi. But you still can't bench now, according to these shitas. Because how are you benching when you know that you're about to continue eating? You're benching and what? And just requiring a bracha she'ein tzricha? You're creating a new chiyuv to have a new benching later? A double benching? You can't bench when you know that you're about to eat. But a new bracha rishayna you're going to need. And continues the Mishnah Berurah, mitam zeh, gam bar priagofit tzarech levarech ala koshel kiddush, ve'eni yoytzi beberchas bar priagofit shebirach ala yayin sheshasa b'tchila b'seich hasuda. Even if you had wine during this suda and you made a bar priagofen, now you have to make kiddush with a new bar priagofen, and after kiddush you're going to wash it and you have a new hamoitzi, because all of your bracha rishonos are terminated by the fact that you washed mayim achrayim. But this day Shnia says, but bench? No, you can't bench. So you're going to make kiddush and you're going to eat something. Hainu kazayas al kol panim. You have to at least eat a kazayas of food. Kiddush yenechshav l'makayim suda, so that the kiddush should be considered kiddush b'makayim suda. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll pick up next time with the words of the Ramah. Very complicated sugya. And let me tell you, I told you at the beginning of this year, at the beginning of Sif Vav, we barely scratched the surface on the complexities of this Sif. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The Sif of limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe should send Yeshua's refuahs parnasim shidduchim to those in need, and we should be zoichet to see the bias goel tzedek b'meherav yameinu. Amen. Be well.